Hello, I'm Ben Orchard.
And I'm Claire Fitzpatrick.
Welcome to Sword, Sorcery and Synthesizers, the 80s fantasy movie podcast. I'm coming to you from Adelaide.
And I'm in Brisbane.
But through the wonders of modern technology and the magic of Skype, we meet each week to discuss some beloved movie of a bygone era and see what lies behind the nostalgia. Let's talk about Beetlejuice, because there's a new movie coming out in September 2024. Incredible though it may seem, like the first, madcap haunted house comedy came out in, what was it, 1988?
Yes.
I feel that I first saw this film when I was way too young. I would have been 9 years old when I sat down and watched it together with my parents and my little brother. He would have been maybe 6 or something. I don't think he stayed for the whole thing. He just sort of got bored partway through and then walked out. But I would have seen it when I was a child, when I was 9. Is that messed up?
No. Okay, so I'm pretty sure it had like a PG rating, right? And yes, PG rating, like cool, parental guidance, fun family. I think maybe it could have been a little young for it, but perhaps the adult jokes and all the kind of references would have just gone straight over your head. So it seems like something that you can watch with your parents, who are probably really cool, letting you watch it with them. But it's something that when you revisit when you're older, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense.
Beetlejuice had a Saturday morning kids cartoon spin-off. And this, in turn, had a comic book spin-off series. And I dimly remember sort of watching the cartoon as a child and occasionally pestering my mum to get me issues of the comic book series when I was at the newsagent. And there was this whole spin-off of juvenile merchandise from this film. They had Beetlejuice action figures, and for a limited time, there was a Burger King tie-in of, like, Beetlejuice toys you could get with kids' meals. And maybe it was because of the cartoon that, I asked my parents to watch it and we watched it together. They might have thought that the movie was a spin-off of the cartoon, maybe, rather than the other way around.
Possibly. Like, it's also, like, really rude and, like, I guess, a crude kind of humor as well. So I think the crudeness of it doesn't make it so shocking, I suppose. It has that kind of cartoon kind of humor to it as well. So your parents are probably like, oh, it's fine. Who cares about all the cigarette smoking or how he finds a brothel? Because it's crude humor, it's not so in your face.
Well, I guess as a kid, and I'm casting my memory back now, 32 years. I'm trying to cast it back that far. I think what registered to me most strongly was the sort of, as you say, the cartoonish slapstick humor of the Beetlejuice character, which is sort of in line with what I remember of the animated series, which again, I haven't seen 30 years or so. But, I think that registered with me back then. Other things, like I didn't know what a brothel was, so that sequence went right over my head. I mean, I do remember saying to my mum and dad, like, oh, why is Beetlejuice making Lydia wear a red wedding dress? Aren't wedding dresses supposed to be white? And they said, oh, Beetlejuice is just crazy, Ben.
Well, but it's all these little things that we just don't notice. And so it's not actually that scary because we're not adults. We don't know about the real world things. These are just kind of weird, crazy things that this creepy guy is, do it. Like,
Is it messed up that when I was a kid, there were certain scenes that I didn't find at all gross or scary and more funny, like when they meet the other ghosts at the afterlife waiting room, and they all, like, look the way they died. Like, I actually thought it was funny how the ghostly agent, when she's smoking a cigarette, like, the smoke comes out of her cut throat. Or when they meet the guy who's been run over, how he's, like, flat and he's got tire marks all over him. I thought that was funny as a kid.
I thought it feels really cool because I like the point about the suicide aspect that I only realized later on. Like, if you commit suicide, you end up, it's like, you know, in like civil servant kind of thing. And I thought that was cool. But again, I didn't realize all that until I was older. I was just like, oh, cool, that woman's chopped in half. She's reading a book, her legs are over here. It's just that guy's head, like, so small. But then when I got older, I looked into it, and I was like, oh, it actually all makes sense. That's how they died. And the weird thing is that was so creepy for me. Like, obviously now you're like, that's pretty terrifying, really.
So did you also see the movie when you were pretty young for the first time?
Yeah, I'd probably say maybe 10 or 11. A little bit older, maybe age 12. That sort of age. So my daughter is 11. She's 12 this year. So I think I was...
You could go watch this?
She wants to watch it, and she's just like, that look interesting, Mum. And I was like, are you serious?
Oh, well.
It's not anime. Sorry, she's not an anime fan. So maybe I should persuade her through the cartoon. But obviously, now looking back, when I thought, okay, I think that she's old enough to watch it with me, and her being, 11 on the cusp of like 12, I think there are a lot of things there that she either wouldn't notice all the way that they died, or she would just find it funny.
I do think it's weird how a lot of 80s movies that were ostensibly aimed at adults got these spin-offs of Saturday morning cartoons and action figures and, like, merchandise that was aimed at a juvenile audience. I mean, there was a Rambo, like, cartoon series and associated merchandise. You got, like, merchandise associated with, like, Ghostbusters and RoboCop and all of these other movies that really are not for children, or not primarily for children anyway. But they got these sort of kiddie spin-offs. It's bizarre.
Do you think it's also a way for parents to connect with their kids? Or no, actually, kids to connect with their parents, the other way around, to be like, oh, to talk about something, and the kid's like, what are you talking about? Because kids are always asking 1,000 questions, and, oh, this is a movie, and, here, play with this toy. I know, because kids always want to feel like they're part of the adult world.
Like, my dim recollections of the Beetlejuice cartoon is what they toned a lot of things down. I mean, the premise of the cartoon was like, I don't know, Lydia's at high school now and she's just sort of bored, so occasionally she summons Beetlejuice and they merrily skip off hand in hand to the netherworld and have adventures together, and they're just good friends. All of the, like, lustful elements of his character are sort of taken away, or at least I seem to remember it that way.
She's older now. Not what he's into.
Oh, Lord.
But that I think is actually a really clever idea, I think, of a filmmaker or a writer or anyone to adapt something into something else for a different audience. Because it's still a really great way to continue that brand. And so it's like the Beetlejuice brand, because well. And it's still a great way to introduce it to younger audiences for this cool, fun cartoon. And then when they're older, they're like, oh, here's the original. So you kind of rope them in early. You get your audience in early and then show them, the original when they get older.
I have to say, like, I watched it again a couple of days ago, the first movie.
Yeah.
And the things that register to me now as an adult are very different. I think having sort of been through the COVID-19 pandemic and, battled with a bout of COVID recently, like, one of the things that sort of gets to me watching it again is the way that the character of the Maitlands, the ghostly couple played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, how they cope with being stuck in their house.
Good point. I never thought of that, actually. Actually, it's really cool because, like, I guess going through COVID and being stuck and that feeling of being trapped, obviously we can go out and, during the massive lockdowns we could go out, but it was unlimited and you could only go out at a certain point. And that was it. Where these couples, they can go out, but only to go through the netherworld waiting room. They can't actually go out anywhere, otherwise they'd be attacked by this giant weird snake and all the otherworldly monsters. So,
well, also just being stuck with people that you love and you care about, but their quirks can drive crazy after a while.
Well, obviously, some couples love each other's company. But like forever.
One of my favorite scenes, because the Maitlands are quite an affectionate couple, and they have common interests and they connect very well. But I like the scene where Adam Baldwin's character was saying to Barbara, the character played by Gina Davis, as they realized like they're stuck in the attic, and he was like, "Oh, maybe this is heaven." And she says, "If it was heaven, dust wouldn't be everywhere."
That actually makes me think of like the reality of the afterlife. Obviously, we don't know if there's an afterlife, but the reality would be it's so much similar to our life anyway. It's not going to be dust there because there is a waiting life in heaven. Something like that.
I think that's where most of the comedy comes from, is that the vision of the afterlife presented in this is like an extension of like the domestic inconveniences of the mortal world. I mean, the vision of purgatory in this movie is like waiting around at Centrelink for a healthcare card. And, the social workers in this movie, like the case workers for the recently deceased, are as unhelpful as a lot of, like, let's say, real world government bureaucrats I've had to deal with in my life.
Yeah. And like, they give you the handbook for the recently deceased, which is supposed to tell you everything about being deceased and where you can and can't go and guidelines and everything like that. How to use your abilities and stuff in the afterlife, but it doesn't really give them any kind of practical assistance. It's just like tips and tricks. So it seems like a document from the government. Here are all these facts about this particular thing, but we're not going to tell you anything about how to actually use it or how it works or anything like that.
Oh, in the movie they liken it to stereo instructions. I don't know if that's changed so much, but as you said, like government handouts about, how to get disability benefits or, rental assistance or any kind of welfare out of the Australian government these days. It does remind me a bit of the scenes. As an adult, yes, what is registering to me most strongly are just the, unintuitive nature of government bureaucracy and the handouts that they give you to explain how things work aren't very direct a lot of the time. And even today, like you go into a Centrelink office and you try and speak to someone, they'll say, "Oh, have you considered using our website?" Or, "Would you like to go to a corner there where there's a phone and you can talk to someone on our hotline?" It's sort of...
Oh my god, imagine if they, like in Beetlejuice, they had, Twitter or something for the afterlife.
Well, that makes me curious to think that maybe in the sequel that's coming out later this year, they'll incorporate some of these more modern elements. And maybe they'll show that, like, things have progressed in some ways or remained the same in others. Because I don't think all of this technology and gadgetry has really helped that much.
It is actually an interesting thing about remakes or sequels that occur many years later. How do they actually incorporate technology? Because a lot of the things that happened in the original movie, if there was technology, surely Lydia could have called someone or be like, "Help, I'm sucked into the afterlife," But now that there are phones and gadgets and everything like that, how is her daughter going to be able to, is she going to conveniently lose her phone? Is she going to conveniently not be able to get reception and call for help? No. It's interesting to see how this would work as a comparison from the original to
although if I called a friend and said, like, hey, you got to come over, I'm under siege from the living dead, like, it probably wouldn't help much.
Probably not. But
Or if I put it on my Instagram account, somebody help me, zombies are attacking my house, they'd be like, sure, Ben.
sure, alright then. I jam. It was just like a picture of like Beetlejuice coming out of the ground, like the grass, just jumping out. Oh, it's obviously staged. You're obviously just trying to get like likes to things like that. No, actually, he's trying to marry me.
But yes, it's sort of like, watching it again made me realize also that, okay, it's called Beetlejuice. And, Michael Keaton's all over the promotion and people, talk about his character a lot. And the sort of spin-off, cartoon and the Broadway musical sort of revolve more around him. But he isn't actually the main character in terms of like the one who has an arc and is the focus of the comedy. Like, it's pretty much split between, the recently deceased couple, the Maitlands, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, and the, family that moves in, the dysfunctional family. Dietz is played by Jeffrey Jones and Catherine O'Hara and Winona Ryder. And their sort of, let's say, rocky relationship in contrast to the Maitlands' sort of more loving relationship.
Do you think perhaps it's actually really about families? And not anything really to do with the afterlife, but about families. And because obviously, like, Lydia hates her family. She thinks was crazy, which, come on, to be honest, Catherine O'Hara plays the most craziest, like, nonsensical woman ever. But she resonates with...
She's an artist, but even, like, her own agent tells her, like, you are a flake. And Stobbs just short of just saying, like, your art sucks as well.
Whatever. But, obviously, like, I actually resonate with the mother a bit as I'm a bit older. And I've been like, can't we just have a nice house? Can't I just have all my weird things in my nice house? Why is the Sawyer, like, why is she going off into these adventures?
I think the real emotional core of this movie, and I think this might be the key to why it is endured over time, is it's really about learning to live with people and learning to accept the flaws in the people that you love and accept them as they are, warts and all. Like, at the end of the movie, like, the Maitlands don't actually scare off the Dietzes, and they come to an arrangement, a kind of state of peaceable coexistence against all odds. Which I think says everything about what the message is that you're supposed to take away from this movie, if there is one.
Yeah, and realizing that you can, like, it's okay to be different, I suppose. Like, I think it's also about realizing that you can have perhaps even more traditional kind of families. Perhaps it's okay to have that dysfunction in your life. And it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Like, she's always been, the thing is, like, Lydia seems like she's always been surrounded about that kind of non-traditional, kind of non-nuclear kind of family, having such eccentric family, and maybe even I think maybe she wanted that bit of normalcy where her family's so eccentric. So perhaps it's like she becomes eccentric herself, because at the end you see her sort of dancing, you're dancing around in a more kind of, she's wearing like a plaid kind of school uniform kind of look. And it's sort of, she seems more excited and outgoing and happier. So it's also, I think, that whole found family kind of thing as well that contributes to her well-being. She's found people she actually really resonates with, and she seems happier, more wholesome. I guess so.
Well, I think that's a takeaway from this movie as well, that family isn't just the people you're related to by blood. And, like, the Maitlands end up treating her as, like, the daughter they never had, and even, like, helping her with her homework and things like that. But I think the movie is actually quite vague about what happened to Lydia's biological mum. in the Broadway musical, they make it a bit clearer, I think, that she died and that she's in mourning for the death of her mum. But it's not clear in the movie whether like the mum died or they're just divorced or whatever. But that might be part of like the root of her depression.
You know, she sells herself as like an outcast, and she's an outcast because she's within this new family that she doesn't really feel a part of. And perhaps even that could be one of the main things of it, you know, outcasts, people who are, you know, should really embrace their differences and embrace their weirdness, I think. You know, and embrace themselves if they're feeling like they're not fitting into the world, into life, I guess. And maybe that's the whole like found family thing at the end with a dance musical number. You know, that they finally found themselves.
Oh, the music in this film. The funny thing is, like, my first exposure to Harry Belafonte and his seminal calypso music was this film. And I don't have any memory of any, like, earlier exposure to his music. I remember his around that time when I first saw it, some of his music was also being used in biscuit commercials. So, I hate to say this, but whenever I hear the song Deo or Jump in the Line, I'm thinking of either biscuits or, you know, possessed ghosts possessing people.
Ghost possessing biscuits. So if you eat the biscuits, you end up like at the end singing and you're like dancing around.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how the commercial sort of unfolded.
It's interesting that that's how you like connect that song, where I think of that song with this movie. Perhaps even also the ages that we watched it, different commercials and stuff that were around when you first watched it.
The biscuits were called Sayo, and you know how the song goes, Deo, Deo. In the commercials, it was like, Sayo, Sayo.
Oh, I know Sayo. It's just that like plastic cheese. Only plastic cheese was good on those with a little bit of margarine. I guess so. I don't remember the ad, but I used to eat it. Oh. But that's actually very good marketing.
Well, I still remember it 30 years later. They must have been doing something right. I mean,
probably. But it's a really cool song. It adds a lot of like, it's very comedic. Like it's a really good way to add the kind of, I don't know, the Maitlands are kind of stuffy in a way, right? Like they seem like,
well, they're old-fashioned, wholesome Americana couple.
Yeah.
I think it's reflective of who they are, that they're listening to music from the 50s.
Yeah, and having that and then that song, and then it's sort of like, I don't know, like it makes them seem more excitable, more younger as well, not so stuffy. Which could also be something to do with the way that they dress and hairstyles of the 80s and stuff like that, but it made them seem even older. But that song had that, I guess, life into their death. You know, it's energetic, uplifting.
I think the Harry Belafonte songs, just because they're so upbeat and, you know, bright and cheerful, are a good contrast to Danny Elfman's score as well. Which is both sprightly and gothic. It's hard to describe.
I like it because there is that kind of mad weirdness to it. So obviously when they go down into the underworld like that, and even the music and sounds when they're following the giant worm thingy, it's got that rush, that exhilaration. The sounds of it are like the music is it works for that because it's that feeling of like trepidation. I think the score is used in a really good way to evoke a lot of like feelings of, I don't know if you're supposed to be scared. You're not supposed to be scared, but it's also that I think that the music makes you think of, you just don't know what's going to happen next. There's an edge of your seat quality to it, I think, especially when they go down into the underworld. It's like hurried, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I think the other like quirk of Danny Elfman's music which is something that carries through not just in this movie, but to some of his other things like Edward Scissorhands and Nightbreed, is that whenever he wants a certain reaction from the audience, like a reaction of wonder, like, ooh, ah, he actually has the choir go like, ooh, ah, and like actually having that sort of vocal effect, but also like, I don't know, the more whimsical aspects of this movie, the more whimsical scenes have like a la 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 chorus going on. And I once saw a concert of Danny Elfman's music in Adelaide, and it was focused more on the films that he did with director Tim Burton. And you had all this choir and orchestra in their tuxedos and like formal gowns, and they were all very serious as they were going ooh ah and la 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 and ooga booga and all these other sort of weird vocal effects. Yeah, and they looked very serious. And then for the finale, Danny Elfman himself came on and did some of the songs from Nightmare Before Christmas, and he wasn't just singing the songs in character. He was like walking around the stage in character. It was quite bizarre and quite a contrast to like the sort of serious demeanor of the musicians that were on stage before.
So it really is Jack Skellington walking around singing to the audience. Yeah. But that's actually really cool. Like, I guess that also shows that when you're seeing things live, you can still be drawn back to the actual film, the movie and stuff like that. We're actually watching them. So you can be, yeah, like just listening to like, you know, recordings and stuff like that. You can still be reminded of it.
I think the other thing about Beetlejuice that I should mention in terms of nostalgia is that as I became a teenager, I went through this transition period of being someone who has a casual interest in film to being someone who is, I don't know, what you would call it, a cinephile, a film buff, something pretentious like that. And my transition to actually noticing things like the technical processes of filmmaking and directors having a signature style, that was in part due to the films of Tim Burton and like seeing his progression as a filmmaker over the years and noticing the recurrent sort of visual motifs and themes in his work. And also his collaboration with Danny Elfman, which is something else I've come to notice, is that certain film directors have associated composers, that their music becomes as much a part of their work as the visuals. I mean, I'm thinking people like Steven Spielberg working with John Williams or Alfred Hitchcock working with Bernard Herrmann, that kind of thing. And with Tim Burton, most of his films have been scored by Danny Elfman, and they're sort of a double act in that they've worked on other things separately, of course, but like most of the time they're a double act and they're sort of intertwined in terms of like defining the identity of a film.
They understand each other, and they understand what they actually want. You know, like they have this relationship, I'd say, where they can sort of understand the themes that each wants to bring, to bring to it. I guess they understand the themes that each of them wants to bring to the table. But I'm sure working together for all that time, they must just know what each other are thinking in a way. The way that he composes things, there's always a storytelling kind of quality to it. So I think even if you just listen to something without it being a score to film, you just listen to it, it is a really magical, mystical kind of element to it, which is a very fairy tale, gothic fairy tale quality to it. That is akin to like a storytelling. So I think that's also why they work so well together, because they're both storytellers in their own medium.
On the subject of storytelling, I just want to briefly mention this, because a lot of people think of Beetlejuice as a film that Tim Burton wrote. And I've noticed a sort of trend in film criticism that the director tends to get the lion's share of the credit or blame for everything associated with the film, even ideas that weren't their own in many cases. When it comes to Beetlejuice, Tim Burton didn't write the screenplay for this. It was written by a guy called Michael McDowell in collaboration with Warren Scarson. Michael McDowell is better known as a horror novelist. I haven't read anything that he's written. I know his most famous works are The Amulet and Cold Moon Over Babylon. And he did write some episodes for like anthology series like Amazing Stories and Tales from the Dark Side. Warren Scarson I best know for his work on action movies like Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2. But they were the ones who actually came up with the story, the themes, the characters for Beetlejuice. Tim Burton did a great job of visualizing all of their ideas and, bringing it to life in a physical world. But he didn't come up with these characters. They were the works of other people.
I actually have read The Amulet by Michael McDowell. You've mentioned it before, and for some reason, I just didn't connect his name with The Amulet. So I actually have read The Amulet. And it's actually a really, really cool novel that came out in late 70s, early 80s. Can't exactly...
1979, according to Wikipedia.
Oh, okay. But what I really like about it is because obviously these residents in a small town, they kind of just they're killed off. Whoever has this amulet, something terrible happens to it. I would actually say it's a precursor to the Final Destination movie. Something happens to other people. The people in the story, they die in all these really weird ways. All these bizarre kind of interesting ways. And so sticking out made me think back in the waiting room of if Beetlejuice, of them dying in all these different interesting ways. And it makes me wonder, as Carrie Bradshaw would say, I couldn't help but wonder, was the amulet or even Michael McDowell instrumental in even thinking about, all these different depths? And he had written a book previously about amulet and people dying in all these weird, interesting ways. So maybe he was saying, all right, we got a waiting room. Who's here? Who's died? What are the different ways that we can make them be dead?
I did think to myself during those scenes, gee, it's lucky that the Maitlands only drowned.
Yes.
Because all of these other people who died these much messier deaths are stuck with these, wounds of however they died. It's probably why their caseworker doesn't have much sympathy for their whining. Seems to think, oh, well, you've got it easy anyway.
Their drowning is just too boring to Michael McDowell. Obviously, that's why other people were in the writer's room. They were saying, calm down, dude, calm down. It has to be just, everyday drowning. It can't be a spark through the head.
When you have more than one writer credited, you always wonder, who did what. And the stories that I've heard on, dubious sources like Wikipedia and TV tropes are that the original script was a bit more serious, and when Warren Scarson came on, it became a bit more comedic in its approach.
Which I think is obviously, a good thing. I love that comedic kind of tone to it. And I actually think it set a precedent for a lot of comedic horror films. But could we imagine, I don't know, if it was a very serious horror film, it would be this couple who drowns back to the house and they're sucked into the underworld or something like that. It would be a very different tone, a very different film. So I like the elements because it makes it stand out. And I don't know, I wasn't alone back then. Was it different?
Was it different from things that are out at that time then? I don't know.
I can't really think a lot of things that you could compare Beetlejuice to. And during that time, I can't think of something like that would be similar to that at that time.
Well, I think that was probably the key to its success, was its originality, or at least its novelty. Yeah. I'm sure lots of people will write into us telling us that, oh, it's just like such and such a thing. Maybe. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So it probably had a certain novelty value, and I think that was what, sold the movie. But I do think part of the appeal of this movie also is that the ensemble worked together so well.
Yeah. I think they're all, they all work really well in what they do. So you have, the stuffy couple. Like, I think of them as groups of actors together. You got the stuffy couple, the weird eccentric family, and then I guess, Beetlejuice and Co.
It's like the wild card. I think the other thing that probably was very striking at the time is that many of these actors were playing against time. Now, Michael Keaton, who's an actor I have a lot of time for generally, but he had done comedies before this, but the comedy was more of a dry, sarcastic, deadpan style, and the films themselves were pretty grounded. The thing is, with Beetlejuice, he's a larger-than-life, wacky ham. It's the kind of character you'd expect someone like Robin Williams or Jim Carrey would play. It's kind of a surprise that, Michael Keaton, of all people, had a Beetlejuice in him. I mean, after this, he mostly had dramatic roles. So it really stands out in his filmography, that's for sure.
I've only seen him in more, dramatic films. This was, something that, I'm not familiar with a lot of any other kind of comedic things. But I think, everyone, even, the Maitlands, I'm sort of on the Maitlands, I'll have to say. I think the actors worked really well together. I like Paul and Gina Davis. They seemed to really play off each other really well. They seemed like a real couple. Because there's some movies that I watch where I'm like, they just don't have that, the chemistry. But I really felt the chemistry between the actors, and I felt that they were a real couple who were really going through this ridiculous afterlife business, I guess. I think they work really well with each other.
Well, that's the thing. Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis only get a few scenes where their characters are alive and kicking, and living a normal life before they're thrust into this bizarre afterlife. Stuck haunting clueless yuppies. And it's like they do a good job of selling the relationship and establishing it. So establishing a sort of relaxed, easygoing rapport with each other to start with. So as soon as they're dead and they're making these bungling attempts to be scary, you buy it,
And it actually makes me think of how they would be as a couple while being alive. A couple that does a lot of things together. They understand each other. They're out for a bit of adventure, obviously. And they don't seem to take themselves seriously. Obviously they want to defeat Beetlejuice, but they seem to have a lot of fun with each other. And I don't know if that is, again, if that's just the way the characters are written or the actors were working together.
It establishes a contrast between the Maitlands and the Dietzes. The Dietzes don't have a lot of common interests, and that is probably why their relationship is a bit rocky, to put it mildly. And why they're sort of effective comic foils for each other. In that, Jeffrey Jones is he's often been typecast as stuffy conservative, and it's because he's so good at it, and so good at sort of seeming exasperated by the, craziness of his family around him. But he also has moments of being genuinely affectionate with his daughter, and Lydia is moping, but there are moments where her family's in danger, or just in danger of being mildly inconvenienced, and she's sincerely warning them about what's going to happen, and willing to take some risks of her own to protect them. And you see the affection underlying the hostility.
She does care about her family, and she doesn't actually want them. I think in the beginning she's like, oh, it'd be great if they could be, sucked up to the afterlife. But she doesn't actually want that. And again, that comes back to the whole family dynamics of her not feeling like she fits in, but knowing that she does want a thing. I'll go. Simon mentioned Beetlejuice about like Catherine O'Hara. She is one of my favorite actresses. Like, I know she had quite a big, resurgence, I guess, an interest in her with Schitt's Creek, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. But there's some people who are like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that she was actually the mother in Beetlejuice. But she's amazing. Like, she wears a glove for a hat. And she just wears the most ridiculous outfits. She's so over the top with her cool sculptures. Like, again, as a kid, I thought she was like zany and like, I was like, she's weird. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh my god, she'd be a great friend. Like, she's such a cool kind of person.
Well, I've seen some modern art installations over the years that, aren't all that different from some of the sculptures that her character comes up with. So, watching it now, part of me thinks maybe as an artist she was just a bit ahead of her time. As for O'Hara, yes, she has very, very sharp comic timing. And
I do find that the similarities actually between her character in this and then her character in Schitt's Creek. So in this, she is like an melodramatic artist. She is just over the top. She just wants to do her work, and she's like a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect, like with the big crane that's coming in. Like, everything has to be exactly where it's supposed to be. And then in Schitt's Creek, which is one of the best shows ever, she's like the same character, but it's different. Like, she's eccentric, everything has to be perfect. She wears the most ridiculous outfit. And I love that as an actor, she's able to, channel this zaniness. And even though they're very, very different shows and movies, I think she's a really good actress, and she can really embody this really weird, out there kind of person. But also, she's an artist. Just wants the place to be. Doesn't want anyone to bulldoze her sculptures. Like, leave her alone and let her just do her own. Yeah, she's one of the standout kind of like actresses, I think, especially in this movie. She stands up in the movies.
I can't add anything more to that, although you've reminded me that I really must check out Schitt's Creek one of these days. I've still never seen it.
What? It's so good. It's so funny. There's actually a lot of references to different films as well, because she's wearing zany outfits, gloves for hats, which is literally what she was wearing as the mother in Beetlejuice. So there's so many kind of similarities. Really big hats and things like that. Oh, that is so weird. But I think, like, you could say that perhaps she has these typecast as that sort of person, but I don't think so. I think maybe she's just a creative person, and she fits those roles, So she definitely fits another role.
I agree. Typecasting, I think, usually happens because someone is really good at something, though. Yeah. But coming back to Michael Keaton, I think it does, cause more of an impact when they're playing against type. And the thing is, his character Beetlejuice is used sparingly in this. We've spent so much time talking about the other characters because they get the most screen time. It's funny that, the movie is called Beetlejuice, but he's really more of a supporting character in terms of both the drama and the comedy. He's like a spanner that gets thrown in the works, like quite late in the proceedings, really. But I think because he's held back for so long, when he's finally unleashed, it really has an impact.
I think I was reading that he's only in the movie for like 15 or so minutes, something like that. And like you said, he doesn't even appear on screen for almost half an hour. And the fact that he can make such an impact in that such short little screen time is amazing. Amazing as himself as an actor and embodying that character. And it makes you feel like he's always, he's been there. He's lurking in the background the whole time when he's not actually in the film at all. Till midway. which is such a testament to his ability to just embody this crazy character that makes you think that he's beaten.
I think I read somewhere that Keaton said it was one of his favorite roles, and that the only other role he had that really, where the director just like gave him carte blanche to just go crazy with it, was when Kenneth Branagh directed him as Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing. But other than that, yes, it's sort of a role where he had a chance to like go the whole hog in hamming it up. But at the same time as being this hammy, ridiculous creature, being menacing and sleazy, and being, I don't know, a dangerous presence as well. Like, I was genuinely creeped out by him, as well as being, as finding him funny.
Yeah. It was super creepy. It was a super creepy bird as well. But I think this is sort of where that he could be scary for younger kids or not, depending on how they view or they understand of, back to fiction. This is a real kind of thing. Because there are so many scenes where he does become very monstrous. And then he goes back to his campy old ways of, with the TV show and jumping over the ground. And I think he has that great ability to be both very villainous, but then also just this fun, rollicking guy who just sort of wants to hang out with everything else in life. It has that very cool dichotomy.
Well, watching it again whenever he came on screen, I kept thinking, right, this is a film that the powers that be thought needed a sort of kids' cartoon spin-off. Like, one of the first things he does is, like, grope Gina Davis and forcibly kiss her and, make all of this sort of, like, lecherous, leering gestures whenever there's a female around.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy. What is that? It's just, he's a creep, and you would want to be around him. And he's always trying to, like, kiss her and everything like that, pulls her in his arms, so,
I guess with the generally comedic tone of the film, I wasn't really scared that any of the characters would die or anything. Yeah. And, like, even the obnoxious character of Otto, what's his name? The guru character?
Yeah. Imagine his business card, interior decorator, / spiritual advisor, / voodoo practitioner, / Ouija board master.
Again, another finely cast, member of the ensemble who, doesn't always get a lot to do, but makes the most of the screen time when he does get something to do.
Yeah. Like, they all stand out. Like, I don't know what to say. I think all of them actually make the most of their characters and their screen time. Every single person in the film stands out as their own.
I suppose I should also, I think we've mentioned everyone else. I mean, I think this was one of Winona Ryder's breakout roles. I know she had been in films before this. I can see why it was a breakout role, though. I mean, she's often relegated to playing the straight man to all these other wacky personalities in the film. But when she gets, a snarky put down, like, she makes the most of those lines. And she has enough, like hinting at the wounded soul underneath all of the sort of mopey adolescent angst. That's just sort of, just so she's not completely annoying, I think. Like, I cared about her even though she had her annoying moments.
And I think it was really cool because she was only, I think, 16 or 17 in the role. And pretty sure 17, I think.
If that's true, it's really interesting. Like, it's interesting. It's interesting that they actually got a real teenager instead of a 20-something to play a teenager.
Yeah, I'm not sure she was quite young, and I think that also is a testament to her acting ability in the future. Like, she she's kind of nonchalant about things. I don't know, she's great. But she doesn't seem fazed about all these weird kind of wacky things. It's more like, oh, this guy again, oh, the afterlife, oh my god. Why is this happening to me? Why can't I just, be left in peace to die? Just leave me in peace, leave me alone.
Well, in a weird way, I think that's where a lot of the comedy comes from, is her being unfazed by things. Although, it's not surprising, the Maitlands, do a pretty terrible job of scaring people. I mean, when they're putting sheets over their heads and trying to fright people with that, they choose sheets that have these, flowery patterns or whatever on it, so they look weird, rather than scary. I suppose I should chime in with some criticism here. So, a lot of the time, it just seems like the characters manifest a new power as the plot demands. Or just, you suddenly find out they can do something because that makes for a cool image or a funny image. But it's not really foreshadowed as such. I'm really reaching here because I just don't want it to come across as it's wall-to-wall fanboy gushing on my part. I feel like I'm contractually obligated to pick a nit somewhere. And some of those special effects haven't aged all that well. Especially watching it again on a high-definition TV, I can kind of see the wires that are holding up Beetlejuice as he's flying around. And the sandworms aren't as convincing as they used to be.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing as well. Some people have said that it's a bit too cheesy and it's a bit too stupid, and it's just about, life and death that are, more time spent on that, like the underworld and stuff like that. And a lot of people would, have mentioned that, it focuses too much on humans, it's boring. We want to get to know more about Beetlejuice. But again, as we mentioned, he's not really doesn't have a lot of screen time, so we can't get to know him more at all. A lot of people have said, it's a silly movie with cool characters. So, maybe, I don't know, but it depends on what the direction is. Are they focusing on the character, the family dynamics? If so, then the movie is great. If they wanted to focus more on the afterlife and things like that, if so, maybe the movie is understood, doesn't spend a lot of time. But I spend a lot of time with Beetlejuice itself. Maybe it depends on what you're looking for in the movie. Bring some wholesome family fun. Sure, it's great. If you want to learn more about the afterlife, that kind of underworld, then there is a lot there. But then I don't think there needs to be. I think it's done quite well. I don't know, I can't really think of particular flaws, and if I did, I just reach it to my grasp.
In conclusion, I'm really glad that you suggested we do this film for the podcast. I enjoyed revisiting it. I was surprised that, it still held up after all these years, but also that it worked on many levels, not just as a sort of wacky screwball comedy, but also it worked on the level of a family drama, and there was a bit more to this movie than just the visual spectacle, which is sort of what a lot of critics are focused on. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really cool movie, and I'm more curious than ever now to see what direction the sequel goes in, and what more adventures are to come.
That's all for this week, folks. Thanks for listening. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing and sharing this podcast with your friends. If you have any questions or would like to provide suggestions for future episodes, you can send an email to fantasypodcastfeedback@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.